Good y'all, welcome back. Happy Saturday. Happy Saturday. It's been a weird day. It's been a weird day. Obviously, my Knicks just made a trade, one of my favorite players on the team. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird about that. And then just watched Manchester United lose. So yeah, it's been a weird day. It's been a weird day. But first, hope you guys are doing good and amazing, doing very, very well. Back again, F1 video, the incredible evolution of F1 tires. So we are going to see from back in the day until now. Obviously, and I did see Pirelli. I think Sonic's. I mean, not Pirelli, but wow, this is crazy. Oh, okay. So it's like the official teams for like next year out. I saw like F1 posting. I'm gonna make this quick and simple. But I did see like the teams come out. I didn't see Zach Brown in terms of McLaren. I saw somebody else. And I saw Aston Martin have a new guy as well. I think AlphaTauri. I think another team as well. I didn't really like fully look at, kind of like skim through it. But the McLaren was like the main one to me. Like I didn't see Zach Brown. It was like a whole another guy. But like, so I didn't really like look at it. Like fully look at it. So I maybe just actually like misreading it and stuff like that. But I didn't really have it like post it as well like the team. So yeah. So anyway, let's go. Let's hop straight into it. As always, shout out to Driver61. As always, don't forget to like the video and sub as well. Let's get it. Also, give me thoughts about the 2024 team lineups and stuff like that. Are you happy? Are you sad?
Formula One tyres have changed a lot, from the skinny radials in the first Grand Prix cars to slicks and then grooved and then back to slicks again. Where today, the tyres continually, or almost continually, support the car at speeds of up to 200 miles an hour and pull up to 6G when on the brakes. So for this episode of Track Evolution, I'm going to take you from the 50s to today and explain what's changed and why tyres have continually caused arguments in F1. Let's go. Right, so in the 50s, they did tyres the old school way. Skinny, treaded tyres with relatively simple construction. And really, they weren't much different from the tyres you would see on a modern mountain bike. And they were supplied by a whole bunch of different...
Golly. He said they weren't as different compared to... Sorry, that was my phone. They weren't as different compared to tires that was on a mountain bike. And they were driving, I'm assuming they were driving this, on cars back then, going like hella fast. Let's keep going.
Different manufacturers.
This is interesting.
People like Pirelli,
I'm intrigued.
Firestone, Dunlop, and Engelbert.
This is
But
a
if
very,
you take a
very
look
weird
at the
video.
stats, Pirelli were a
Right
class
now.
above the rest, taking way more wins and podiums. And this was apparently due to them being both faster and lasting
Pirelli's still
longer,
with us
and
too.
that seems strange to hear as a current F1 fan, but we'll get to that bit. The fronts and the rears were the same size, both in diameter and width, so the cars really didn't have a whole lot of grip. Taking a corner in the 50s was kind of a case of cranking on a whole load of steering lock and then just waiting for the understeer to end. Typically, they would then get on the power and turn this into oversteer, and honestly, they were drifting for a lot of the lap. And it gets a bit scary when you think about the braking. These cars were fast. They did about 160 miles an hour on the straights, and they were using very simple, grabby brakes to slow down the car, and the contact patch was like this big. The construction was initially made of cotton fabric with rubber then laid over it. However, Dunlop came in with the R5 racing tyre in 1958, which replaced the cotton with nylon. This greatly improved the strength of the tyre and reduced the weight by 5.5 kilos per tyre.
That's
But
hard.
to be honest, this didn't do a whole lot to reduce the unsprung weight, as the cars were using steel rims with spokes. These wheels weren't particularly stiff, especially in the corners, and they actually used wheel nuts that were torqued up by hitting them with a mallet. In the early 60s, they introduced synthetic rubber rather than the natural stuff that comes from trees, as well as greatly increasing the width of the tyre. And this made sense. Increasing the contact patch is the best way to improve overall grip. And you can do this two ways, either by increasing the width or the diameter. So by this point, Dunlop were the sole supplier for a few seasons, up until '64 when Goodyear stepped up as a second supplier. The rear tyres were now often larger than the fronts, but were still using a tread pattern. It is not like the tread we have on road cars now, where the sole purpose is to pump out water. This tread wasn't as good as that, as the channels were made as small as possible for maximum contact area on the road. The tyre manufacturers were also facing another problem at the time. With increased power and increased cornering speeds, the tyres were generating a lot of heat and then overheating in the race. And obviously this is really bad for performance as the rubber heats up so much that it begins to break down. Wearing
That's the part I didn't want to say because I was really listening. I was low-key tuned in for real. I mean, I was tuned in, not low-key, but anyway. When they switched the rubber, obviously, because Buddy came in with new tire, stuff like that. It was really, really good, stuff like that. It still wasn't like great, because like I said, they're driving so fast. It still has some, like small issues with that. But we do know with rubber, and we see it now with like the tires now, stuff like that. They're going so fast. The tire, the rubber, it can rub off. Like we see like when they like change the tire, like how that tire looks afterwards. Like it's probably like 15, 20 laps, but that tire is done, and like because it's hitting the ground, the pavement, especially if it's hot like a Bahrain. Or stuff like that, like where it gets really, really hot during races, like the race we had this year. I don't think it was Bahrain. I think it was Bahrain. I don't know, but remember the race we had earlier this year was very, very hot, stuff like that. Just imagine back in the day. Oh, dude, holy crap! Just heat it.
very quickly and producing very little grip. And the answer to this was to create harder tyres that didn't produce as much heat. But this came with a side effect of taking longer to warm up to peak operating temperatures. Pretty similar to the hard tyres we see in F1 now.
Yeah, I was going to say now.
It wasn't until 1971 that Firestone introduced the first slick tyres. They noticed that you could maximise the contact patch of the tyre by just removing the tread pattern altogether. So instead of adding about 10mm of tread to the tyre, they added tread in one smooth surface all around the tyre. The performance gain was huge, with the lap times changing significantly as a result. If you remember this graph from a previous episode, you can see that the theoretical lap time difference between 1970 and 1971 was pretty significantly different.
3 seconds.
The 70s was also the era where aerodynamics really took hold, and with that came greatly increased loads on the tyres. Well, they suddenly had to deal with around double the load compared to just 5 years ago.
That 3 seconds is such a big difference.
Much more heat, with more power in the cars, aero working its magic, and cornering speeds rising quickly. So manufacturers began working on different compounds of tyres with different additives to reduce the wear at high temperatures. But they also created a tyre that was softer, starting the age of the qualifying tyre, where the tyres were designed to last one flying lap with absolute maximum performance. And then they'd fall off a cliff. The tyres also began to equal out between the front and the rear, both using similar width and similar diameter rubber.
You know what's funny? I saw like he said they had like just a qualifying like tire. Like, so imagine if they actually applied a qualifying tire during a race. Actually would be kind of scary. That would be kind of scary. I ain't really think about that one. Yeah, that would be kind of scary because just imagine if you put the qualifying tire on a car during a race, you didn't even know it. Next thing you know, it ends up in an incident.
And then in 1985, tyre blankets were first used. And this was a way to get around having the warm-up phase, where drivers would have to work the tyres hard on an outlap to bring them up to temperature. But to explain that, let me pass you over to Scott.
My name's Scott Mansell. I'm auditioning for a role as presenter. Most people might think you do this by jumping on the brakes, doing burnouts or cranking on loads of understeer like Alonso does. But this can cause issues if not done right. If you just did burnouts, you warm the surface much more than the sidewall and the core of the tyre, which can create blistering or massively increased wear. So you need to bring the whole tyre up slowly. This is normally by weaving, loading the tyre gently in the corner and working the tyre progressively. And back when I was racing in Formula 1 cars in Boss GP, you had to do this without taking too much life out of the tyre, as those tyres barely lasted a full lap at quali pace.
Scotty out.
Anyway, the tyre blankets solved that issue. You could program them to bring up the rubber to temperature slowly and come out of the pits at full chat. To begin with, they use essentially tents with heaters in, bringing the temperature of the tyres up slowly, but not very much. And often all of that temperature was gone by the time you'd carried them to the grid. So then they started essentially modifying electric blankets, and those are like the ones your parents have on their bed. And it allowed much greater control of the temperature, as well as being better insulated so that they stayed warm all the way to the grid. And since then, they've got far more complex with better heating elements and temperature sensors. allowing the teams to be very, very precise with how they heat them up.
That's
Remember,
actually pretty
around
cool.
this time, the
That's
turbo
actually
and ground
really
effect
cool.
era was sending speeds sky high, loading tyres to their absolute maximum. The structure and general strength of the tyre grew a lot in this time, not necessarily with materials, but with the general design of the carcass. Now, over the early to mid-90s, speeds got very, very high, with driver aids coming in, massive advancements in suspension systems, and very light cars. But really, the tyres stayed pretty similar. That is up until 97. The FIA decided to further reduce speeds, they would limit grip, but not in the conventional way they had up until now by reducing downforce. Instead, they brought in grooved tyres, which on the surface is a bit confusing. They reduced the contact patch of the tyre, but not by just reducing the width of the tyre itself, but by adding grooves. Setting aside that using much narrower tyres would look weird, the narrower tyres brought another issue into play. They would greatly reduce drag. Now, if you think about it, the surface of the tyre is travelling in the opposite direction to the airflow at the front of the car. So if you're doing 100 miles an hour, the speed difference between the air and the surface is 200 miles an hour, bringing with it massive drag. On a modern car, the drag from the tyres is equivalent to one hatchback at motorway speeds.
It seemed like every tire that they have like gone with has had some like it doesn't like fit like every like I guess component. Like one tire may do this but has that. But I think that was something that was obvious anyway. Like yes, this tire may be able to do this, but the down part is XYZ. Like you just go through different tires, stuff like that. Like I said, a lot of it was for like the speed, or for like the grip, stuff like that, the drift, whatever. And it's like yeah, it's good, but let's try this, and it led to this, stuff like that. So it's interesting to see like how much effort they're putting into the tires. Like it seemed like they were constantly trying to like find the right tire. I don't think that's really gonna happen because like even if you design a tire to to counterpart one thing, it was going to affect another component. So like there was no like
per tire. So what the reduced grip would reduce in cornering speeds, the narrow tires could just add back. So anyway, they went with the grooved tires. But this had another effect. The grooves were really tough to construct for the manufacturers.
Yeah, see,
if the
exactly.
tire compound was too soft, they would wear really quickly and break away from the tire. So it actually placed a limit on how soft the tyres could be, again, slowing the cars. But really it meant the tyres could go for longer, meaning the drivers could really push on them from lights out to the checkered flag. And remember that? That was pretty cool. At this point though, there was an all-out tyre war. Bridgestone and Michelin were battling it out to try and solve the groove tyre problem. And their biggest issue was graining.
But what you did was rip the edge of the block, effectively, the continuous block. Yeah. And as that ripped,
that's David
then you would be rolling over the tyre. So there's a lot of marbles from that type of tyre. And we were at that time allowed to run scrub fronts on new rears. So we did that quite often in qualifying because you just couldn't get the front tyre not to grain on your timed lap. It was just, for me, it was a lost era of Formula One because it was dominated by tyres.
So essentially the tyres weren't great until you'd worn them in and then gone through that graining process. On introduction, lots of drivers complained, Jacques Villeneuve most of all really, saying that the cars were now harder to stop and more prone to spinning. And the FIA gave him a slap on the wrist for that one. And as we know, the biggest tyre-related drama around this time was the 2005 Indianapolis Grand Prix, which is a video in itself. But essentially, the tyres weren't up to the loads that they were subject to on the banking. But weirdly, this only affected the Michelins. So the 6 Bridgestone runners then took part in the world's most boring race. It wasn't a good look for F1. Now, over the next years, there were a few more changes. The front tyres went from 3 grooves to 4, and Bridgestone eventually became the sole supplier in 2007. They provided 4 different compounds with 2 on offer for each race. Then to denote the different compound, the softer tyre, they called it the option tyre, was shown with a white line in one of the grooves. That's rather than the different colours we have on the sidewalls now. This lasted up until 2009, where Bridgestone announced they were stepping down from the sport. Michelin, Cooper Avon and Pirelli all showed interest in securing the sole tyre supplier role. And as we know, Pirelli secured it. Pirelli removed the grooves and Formula One was back to slicks again. But that didn't mean they would suddenly last the entire race. I mean, Hamilton was leading the 2010 Spanish Grand Prix before his front tyre just left the chat and spat him in the barrier. Pirelli were asked by the FIA to deliberately create tyres that would degrade rapidly. And that was due to what happened back in 2010 in Canada. For that race, the Bridgestone tyres were degrading unusually fast due to higher track temperatures. So many of the cars had to use 3 or 4 stops to make it work. And that really did shake up the race. But the FIA liked that, and Pirelli then seemed to take it a bit far. The tyres were really unpredictable and degraded unbelievably fast. And there was a lot of backlash from the drivers saying they had to tiptoe for the whole race, and the team saying that the strategy was almost a lottery. I mean,
Yeah, if you're constantly, Jesus, if you are constantly having to worry about if your tire's gonna come off because of its reliability and like its makeup, that's not good. It's not good. I don't know why the FIA was, or the F1 whatever, was so happy about that. That's kind of weird to me. Why you basically want to see, a few cars spin out every race, but I mean that's kind of crazy to me. It's kind of crazy to me, but here we are.
2017, seemingly out of nowhere, half the grid had a tyre let go. Vettel accidentally lost the lead of the championship because of it. Then in 2018, Bottas's tyre just let go because of a tiny bit of debris in Baku, and there's been a whole lot more. And really since then, Pirelli have been slowly developing the tyres each year, keeping the shorter life, but making them more and more predictable. And really in the past 2 years, with speeds and aerodynamics increasing dramatically, the loads through the tyres have also been growing, and it's shown because they've still had a load of seemingly random blowouts, even as recently as Max in Baku this year, and in Silverstone last year. We all know what happened there. And then that brings us up to next year, where Pirelli are moving to 18-inch tyres rather than the 13s we've had for many years. And this is going to be interesting because they shouldn't have the same structural issues that these current tyres have had, but here's hoping anyway. But this will limit the grip, as the current 13-inch tyres play a large role in the suspension of the car. This essentially comes as the tyres perform best with as little pressure as possible. So with all this squish in the sidewall, there was no point in having loads of travel in the suspension because you could just use the tyre. Whereas the 18s will have a stiffer, slightly smaller sidewall, and they will also have slightly less overall grip. But it looks like it will produce better racing and relate the tyres better to the ones that Pirelli sell for your road car. And I guess
that's interesting. Very, very interesting. Because you see how tires were from back in the day. They're basically mountain bike tires is what that's what they were saying. Obviously we changed it, stuff like that. Aerodynamics became big in the 70s. Also, you gotta get tires, try to match that. And we had all the tire wars, stuff like that. Bridgestone, Michelin, the other team I've got, I think started with like an Avon, I think. I don't think so. Stuff like that. And then we also had like the different type of tires, like the one with like the almost a Velcro, but like the little like line, stuff like that. Basically, like each tire design was like different. And then like he said, with these keep coming of cars, when Buddy interviewed David Coulthard, that was basically like a lost season because it was dominated so much by tires. Like, I guess that season everybody was talking about, tires. We didn't really care about like the racing. And then we see with Pirelli now with their tires, stuff like that. And I don't even really remember this past season or recently. I'm trying to think. I don't know if we ever really talked about it, but they have stuff regarding like the cars, and the reliability of it, in these 3 or 4 pit stops, FIA loving it. So it was a lot that happened in this video. A lot that happened in this video. Very, very good video as well. As always, you guys let me know you guys thoughts about it. Don't forget to like the video and sub as well. If I missed anything, let me know. Don't forget to like the video and sub. Talk to you guys soon. And if I don't see you guys tomorrow for Sunday, Happy New Year. We'll definitely be back. But we should have no one for you guys tomorrow. Love you guys. Peace.